Welcome to another episode of The Unconditional Life. I'm Johnny.
I'm John.
We appreciate you guys joining us today. John, today, let's talk about humility.
Yeah, I love this one.
One of my favorite topics because, I don't know, it just speaks to one's state of mind and how they go about life. First of all, for me, humility is, like I've been in sports for most of my life, so humility comes up a lot. And in that context, it was always about being coachable, being open, but mainly being coachable was like really what I was taught that it was growing up. But as I grew up and started to get older and started to really, and as we talked about it coming down here, there's a lot more deeper meaning to what humility truly is if you look at it as a state of mind and way to live life.
Yeah, way of being.
It was almost like put to me as, hey, and in these moments, you want to try to be humble growing up. You know what I mean? If this happens, try to be humble. Well, I don't think humility, now my definition of humility has changed so that now it's not necessarily how do I respond to individual moments, but how do I live a humble life? You know, how do I come from there in all my interactions instead of,
absolutely,
hey, how do I be humble about that or that? It's not really about that.
How do I live humble?
It's about, being from that perception. And I love what you told me on the way down here. I'll let you let's talk about it in a minute about just how, and we even talked about a little bit about it last episode about being right. And what were you telling me about being right and how it tied into humility?
Well, I've learned that right is ego based, and I screw up a lot. I'm a human mess making machine. I make mistakes all the time. And I know that I've made mistakes and been very convinced I was right, and then found out later and had to go eat humble pie. Humble pie sucks, so I don't focus on being right. Like I actually enjoy the not knowingness. And I'm kind of an anomaly. If you gave me a box right here that had the answer to whatever the question is everybody wants to know, I wouldn't look. No key on it. You could leave it right there the rest of my life. I wouldn't look. I love the mystery of everything.
Yeah, there is something to be said about the mystery.
And I think that my favorite people are teachable people. Are people that I would like to be known for the guy that's open-hearted, open-minded, rather than the guy that knows it all.
Right.
Because, again, even if you do know it all, you could still learn something.
Yeah. Well, because humility is also being willing to be wrong. I think that's when you're starting to drive at the true nature of what humility is and how to implement that and how to live a humble life.
Yep.
It's not about not being proud of things that you do when you do good. Own those. Be proud. Not in a rub it in your face type of way, but in a you just achieved something. That's cool.
Yeah, I did a good job.
I'm not talking about that kind of humility. I'm talking about being willing to not be right. You know, and that's something you said too, I think, on the way down here. We were talking about that.
You could be right or you could be happily married.
Yeah,
I just talked about
we
that
talked
book.
about that last episode too. But being willing to be wrong, that's when most great scientific discoveries are made too. When you have a hypothesis and you go test it. Most scientists
They're trying to find out if it's wrong.
They're trying to prove themselves wrong.
Yes.
They're not looking for the answer. They're looking for everything that would prove that answer wrong. And that's how science is done. That's how our advances are made. They don't go, I think this is going to happen, and then you go try to make that happen. You can duplicate that experience, sure. But it's trying to say, okay, that happen every time.
Is it an absolute?
Right. That's how science happens. That's also how great discoveries are made in your own personal life. Because I've felt in my life before that I've been right, 100%, like you were talking about, 100%. I am right on this. But even though I felt that way, it's still good to be able to go, but if somebody brings me new information, I reserve the right to change my mind, you know?
And even then, why does it matter?
Right.
Like for
it's
me,
an ego thing.
I have I have a different experience because I've been in so many homes for so many years and talked about so many things to men and women and kids and just a whole variety of interesting conversations. And I believe this compelling rightness this desire to be right is because we don't want to be perceived as foolish, or it's filling an insecurity that some of us have.
Yeah.
I remember my child, and out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom. My child told me one day, well, Dad, I don't want people to think I'm stupid, and if I'm wrong, they might think I'm stupid. And I said, well, but don't you think they might even think you're more stupid being right about something that you're wrong about? And that was,
That's
and it was like,
possible.
oh, at least that was there was a glimmer,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, I know I'm wrong a lot, so I've only placed a couple bets in my whole life. I lost one to my wife, but it was funny because she knew she had me. But I just don't care enough. Like, my ego doesn't need to prove that I'm right to you. You'll find out.
It's not that you don't care. It's that you're not attached to.
I'm not attached to it. Yeah,
the outcome of
yeah, you'll find out.
being willing to be wrong is such a cool tool to have.
And it's teachable. You're always teachable then.
Yeah. 'Cause,
Always.
Like, if we're having an argument, John, and I think I'm right, you think you're right, I'm not going to sit here and tell you all the reasons why I'm right. I'm going to listen to what you're saying, even though I feel I'm right, bounce that information around because some of what you said may change what I believe.
And that's exactly how I do it.
Being
Yes.
open, and that comes down to listening to each other too, having the respect for one another to listen to each other. Because that's where you test your theories that you think you're right on, is by what other people say and how that might change the way you see things. So it's really cool to be able to really listen to somebody, hear what they're actually saying, and being willing to suspend your belief for a second and really absorb their information. Because they may be right.
You just added an interesting perspective to my
Yes.
life. When we are so busy formulating an answer or response, we've talked about this just as we've learned
Yeah.
in this podcast. Oftentimes, we'll be very transparent. Oftentimes, when we're talking, I'll say something or he'll say something that will trigger, we need to say this.
Yeah.
And instead of jumping in and interrupting, we've talked about this several times on the way home, allowing the flow of something without either one of us being attached to rightness, just to allow the flow of information and context and love and experience, allows it to come around full circle where actually what we thought had to be said would have distracted from the flow of what was happening.
Yeah.
And so, like, I love the mystery of not knowing. I'm cool with it. My wife is right a lot. Dang her, she's so smart. She's so right a lot. Almost so much that she can't tell when she's wrong. And that it could be crippling, not in a bad way, but she's gotten really good. We're really good about coaching one another. And she's gotten really good. She'll look at me and go, I'm off on this one, huh?
Maybe. Be careful. Don't jump right into the
If
yes.
you have
Be
to
like,
ask
"You know
that,
what?"
if you have to ask that, you might know. And it's like just the willingness to go. I heard I was in a experiential training 30 years ago, and the first thing he said, our ability to grow stops immediately as soon as we say I know something. And so our ability to grow and learn and evolve is in the mystery, is in the not knowingness. Again, how many times have you been totally convinced? And now in this day and age of AI, folks, I don't believe half the stuff I see with my own eyes in real life with real people.
It's true. Well,
And
you
I'm-
can't trust the news anymore.
And I'm laughing about that tongue in cheek. But yeah, everything has been manipulated. Believe what you see, and be open, like truthfully. Even if all 8 billion of us believed exactly the same thing we said, we believe this religion or this dogma. When you start breaking it down, you know none of you believe anything that's the same. Because you break down the tenets of what we think we believe, we're all over the map, all of us. None of us actually believe the same anything.
No, there's no two people on the planet that see things the same way.
No way.
It does not exist.
And so, like, maybe just be open that, and here's the one that'll really bake your noodle off, you're both right. Is that possible?
It can be.
I've seen experiences
Yep.
where both people were
It
right.
doesn't have to be an either or. It can be a both and.
Yep.
Absolutely, it can be.
Yep.
And there's been several experiences in my life where I've realized that the way one person sees things and the way the other person sees things, even though they're different, doesn't mean make them wrong. And that's
Yep.
also what being humble's about too. Because what if you are right, but you're not willing to hear somebody else? You're not really humble, so you're stuck with your little tiny square of rightness. What if you're right, but if you listen to somebody and you're humble and want to hear the other person's opinion, what if they just add to what you believe? You're still right with what you believe, but now your little square's gotten bigger. You know?
Or even how about this? Let's say we're all on a journey to the top of the mountain right here above the studio. And Brad knows the right way, a shortcut. I know the right way, the long way.
I know how to fall down that mountain.
Well, but even what I'm telling you is we might both be able to get to the top of the mountain. And I could have been in my rightness, perfectly justified. I could have also been, hey, maybe my friend Brad knows a little bit of something that maybe we both could get there, but he might be helping me by cutting. Oh, he can cut 3 miles off this journey, and maybe I should be a little humble.
And next time you go
and not
for a
be so
walk-
convinced. Hey, Brad, it's this way, brother. It's this way, and just be open.
And next time you go for a walk, you have both options.
Yeah.
And you may want to still do that 3
I
mile
may want to
hike
go the
because you
longer
want
way,
the exercise,
yeah. Or
but,
maybe it's not as steep, or
but how
whatever
much
it is. But
better do you understand the mountain?
and two. That's what I mean. There's two. You could be right twice. Both of us could be right about the same thing.
And they could be completely different
Yep.
facts, and you can both still be right. So be open to that, guys, too. Whoever's listening today, be open to the fact that it could be both and. Somebody could be looking to add to your truth or what you have for knowledge. Be humble. Be willing to listen.
And really, if you want your relationships to change in your life, how much more fun is it to interact with a person who's always in mystery like that?
Yep.
Rather than, oh man, teach me, help me, show me. Let's talk about it. I don't see it that way, but I'm interested in what you do see.
And what does that look like? True humility in a relationship. Humility isn't just about learning necessarily what you personally, but think about your relationship with your spouse. What could humility look like when you guys are both having a disagreement about something? When you both set aside your egos for a second, put the swords down, because that's really what your egos are. Just something to fight with, and you really start listening to each other. I had one argument with my wife. I can't remember what it was about, but it wasn't too long ago. And we both realized that we were both saying the same
Just
dang
different
thing.
words, yep.
Just looking at it from the different. Like there's a point right here, and I'm seeing it from here. And she's seeing it from here, and I'm trying to get her to see it from here. She's trying to get me to see it from there. And we both drop our egos, and we're like, hey, we're both looking at the same thing.
Yeah, we're both pointing out exactly the same. Oh my goodness.
And
how interesting is
pay
that?
attention to how many arguments, all it would take is that, and it would be over. Wars have been fought from people not being willing to accept that there's more than one way to look at something.
I learned a secret in a marriage, in an intimate relationship, if anybody would like to hear it.
Yes, please.
Stop long enough, walk across the room and make contact. Shut your freaking pie hole. Breathe. Especially in an intimate marriage or spousal live-in relationship. Shut your mouth for a minute. Walk across the room. Make contact. Just long enough, not
Not that kind of contact.
Well,
no.
you could try it, I guess. But that's and see, often we don't do a pattern interrupt. We automatically respond. We do just what we were reflectively taught to do as children. And there is a way to be humble in every aspect of you. I don't have it dialed in by any means. But I'll tell you what, I would, in any time, I would put my wife on air because she'll call me out. You guys, if you ever get to see my wife on air, you'll know she's bold as brass. But I will go to her. Here's a good example. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she said something, and I went, oh. A couple minutes later, I went, oh, wait a minute. Hey, what I really meant to say was, oh, I know, we were backing the trailer up and hooking our fifth wheel up. And it ended up with a little dent in something, and I got in her way while she was trying to help me. And I got snappy with her and then I realized, wait a minute, you jerk. All she was trying to do was make your life happier. Take it while you're worried about getting all loaded up, and you could have at least said, hey, thanks for helping, but I got this. Instead of, just think about how much it's so easy to do that in your life.
But the fact that you caught yourself is a big thing.
Dude, I practiced so hard.
Most people do that and won't even think twice about it.
I practiced so hard.
A lot of people anyway.
I'm 58 years old. I'm trying to do things on purpose. And every day I want to bring the best version of myself to the table.
Yeah.
And when I go to bed at night, I want to look at that man in the mirror and know that I did everything I could to be as decent, as humble, as kind, as loving as I could to everyone that I came in contact with that day.
Yeah. Spreading
That's
your
my
kindness.
mission for myself. Kindness is my religion.
Yep.
And I think being humble is a part of that.
Absolutely. Kindness and humility, I think, walk hand in hand. And I think being humility is essential if you really are trying your hardest to live an unconditional life. So stay humble. Figure out that that's actually a way to
Yes.
live instead of a reaction to something you may have done. So it's possible.
And I promise if you are wrong once in a while and admit it, you won't die.
In fact, life might get just a little bit better.
It might be easier for you. You might find out just like me. I'm a human mess making machine. I make a lot of mistakes, but I'm failing forward always. That's my favorite quote. I'm failing forward as quickly as I can.
Yep.
And I increase the frequency between when I do one dumb thing to another dumb thing so that I'm evolving and growing. We love you guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate
Thanks for checking
you.
in and listening. Have a beautiful night.